Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. My name is Renata, and for those of you who know me, you know what we're doing here. And for those of you who are new, we are here in order to have some soulful parenting conversations about different ways of being a mom and a dad. There is no standard that we should fit in. We should more trust ourselves. And the best way I found to do that is to listen to other people, to tell their stories about how they parent their children and to feel inspired by them. And today I am with Tania Johnson, who is psychologist and co-founder of Institute of Child Psychology. Hello, Tania.
Hello, Renata. Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be with you today. I think your mission is so incredibly important.
Thank you. So we just mentioned before we got on the record that you two lived in different countries. And I guess that gives you this perspective that, oh, people here are moms and dads a little bit in a different way when I always saw other people do around me. How did it shape yourself and your views on parenting?
Yeah, I think when you stay in one culture, so I was born and raised in South Africa, and I think if I had been a mother and a psychologist in South Africa, you stay within your cultural norms because that's what you think mothering is, that's what you think parenthood is. But then I had the unique opportunity to be able to travel and live in Taiwan for a little while. And then my other big chunk of time has been in Canada, where I currently live. And what I've seen, even just in those three countries, is that in each country, there was a really unique parenting style. And just like what you had mentioned to me before we came on the air, when you see different parenting styles in different countries, you go, oh, there isn't one way. There's so many different ways to be a parent to a child. And so for me, it's been this beautiful experience where I can pick and choose what makes sense to my heart.
I remember my first time when I was exposed to this different way of being a mom. That was in France,
Mm.
and at the beginning I was shocked. I was like, "Oh my gosh, they do traumatize children from morning to evening. How
Yeah.
could they do that?" Because from where I come, we are very, very attached to children,
Mm.
and we feel like this is our mission to sacrifice ourselves constantly for the
Yes.
benefit of a child. And in
Mm-hmm.
France, they had this very different attitude, like, oh, children came along and we continue living our lives, like nothing changed. And maybe this is another extreme, but still, so at the beginning, I felt like I really was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, how could they do that? But
What about the children?
yeah,
Yeah.
but then I looked around and I was like, but look to all your friends you have here, all those, adults that surround you, they don't seem traumatized. Or at least if they are not more traumatized that I feel inside somehow, because we all have some, internal stories. So
Yes.
that was my beginning. I was like, how come that people parent children so differently? And yet somehow human arises in all of that,
Mm-hmm.
despite all this, upbringing.
Totally.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think with parenting, there's so much shame and guilt around parenting within cultures. So, and as we're saying today, but yet, what's okay in one culture is not okay in another culture. And I think so often parents, moms, dads go, I'm not doing it okay, or everybody else is judging me. But when we step outside of the box, we go, oh, but actually, there is no one way. And I think for so many of us, it's coming back to how do I feel in my heart? What do I need? So, my experience was that in South Africa, the parenting style seems more family centric. So, the kids will come along and they will do chores and they'll help the parents. It's also more of a top down approach, where at least within my world in Canada, it's more child centric. So everything kind of revolves around the kids, which is similar to what you were saying. So what's so interesting is that then it's about finding this balance to go, what do I need? What do I want? What do I believe in?
Yes, I here I guess I don't know we take it to even another level. So everything is around the child, but then at the expense of the mom.
Mm.
So the pressure on the mom, how she's supposed to be, that like I have to breastfeed my child, because if I don't breastfeed my child, that means that, you know, my child wouldn't be happy.
Ah,
I have to be the one who's next to him during the nights, because if it's my husband, like what kind of mom doesn't get up at night? You know, like just not happening. And so many different stories that really go very far towards child, and then that somehow even forces the mom to stop existing at some point. You know,
mhm.
like the first 3 years of a child, it's everything to the child. And if you, even if you talk about it, people would say like, well, but you know, that's how life is supposed to be, because you know, your child needs you. And I guess
Interesting.
it's tricky because how you separate, you know, this very fragile line between, at some point they do need us, especially when we are very young, but then what about us? I mean, you
Totally.
can't raise another human being if you suppress a human being inside you. That doesn't work either.
Yeah. And you know, what's so fascinating about that, Renata, is that we know that those first 3 years, from an attachment perspective, those first 3 years are really, really important in connecting deeply with your child, helping your child to feel safe in who they are, who their parent is, and who the world is. So we know that those first 3 years are pivotal in terms of a child's mental health. But that being said, the child cannot experience well-being if the primary caregiver, who often is in many cultures the mom, if the primary caregiver is not well. So, you know, I think so often it's taken to these extremes, but we're going, hold on, if mom is empty, it's impossible for her to be giving the child what they need if her cup is empty.
Yeah, exactly. I remember a story. I was in Belgium where my daughter was born, and someone was coming to my house every week to check up on me. I
Hmm.
found that strange. I was like, what about the baby? Why do you care about me? What about the baby?
Oh,
And you
that's
know,
so
and
interesting.
yeah, because they
Ah,
wanna be sure that mom is okay. Because they say
yeah.
that if mom is okay, if mom really feels okay, she's gonna find her way to take care of a child. But
Oh,
she must be okay. And
yeah.
again, at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, what are they doing? They should be taking care of the baby. Again, the
Yeah.
baby, not me. Why does she ask all those questions about me? What's wrong with her? I'm not the newborn. The newborn is just right here.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And I feel like in North America, the moms get forgotten about too. So, you know, in the States, we're all aware of how short maternity leave is. It's horrific. And then our moms are back at work. And even my experience of giving birth here in Canada, my experience was that the moms are completely forgotten about and it's immediately all about the child, which to me makes no sense. If you have a mom who is well, the child is more likely to be well, but the mother just kind of disappears, at least in my experience, in the birthing process here.
Mm,
Yeah, or in the weeks following the birthing process.
yeah. Did
Yeah.
you did you feel left out when you gave birth?
Yes. So, you know, what was so interesting with my experience with my first child, I've got two little girls, but with the first child, um, she so we had our birthing experience, but then within 24 hours, a nurse came to visit to check on her and she had jaundice. So we had to go back to the hospital, which is, I'm glad they picked that up, but we had to go back to the hospital. And I remember when we came in, they said, so I'd given birth basically the day before, came back in and they said, you are no longer the patient. The baby is the patient. You can stay with her. But I was still in so much pain. But I don't think at any point anybody said to me, how are you? Do you need anything? How's your mental health right now? Do you need to sleep? There was nothing. It was all about the baby at this point, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but it's surprising that almost immediately I became invisible, even though that I had gone through this massive thing the day before.
Hmm. Yes, that's how usually things done here too. Like
Mm-hmm.
all attention goes to the child, and to the newborn, and somehow mom is left. And even when family comes, around, when you come home, like, oh, where's the baby? How is the
Yes.
baby? Where's the baby? How's the baby? And hi, I'm here too. What
Totally.
about me? I was here first.
100%, 100%. Yeah. We sometimes joke that, I know everybody's experience of giving birth during COVID was very different, but some of me feels like if I'd given birth during COVID, it might have actually been a more peaceful experience because it could have just been me, the husband, and the baby. It was pretty overwhelming as a mom for me initially.
In motherhood in general. I mean,
Totally.
is it physical, like, care? Is it emotional? Is it boundaries? I don't know. What gets you the most?
So in motherhood and just generally, I think for me personally, and I'm really aware this is what I study, I talk to parents all day. During my day, I'm doing parent consults generally. So I live and breathe all of this. And yet it's still this constant battle for me to carve out time. So, it's not like I say, oh, I need this amount of time for wellness each day. Every week I'm trying to figure out, where can I go to the gym? Where can I have a little bit of time to read? Can I fit in a walk here? So it's amazing that I live and breathe, and I know how important self-care is in motherhood, in parenthood. Yet, even in my own personal life, it's like I'm constantly battling to protect that time.
Mm. It's
And
like somehow you stop being what you were used to be.
Mhm,
And then this mom role, it's so overwhelming. It
mhm,
becomes so everything. And again, I ask myself, we ask this question about children, nature versus nurture, but I ask that question about, like, moms. Where does the nature part, I have this instinct of mom, of mother, so I do vote this kind of stuff because that's what moms do by nature. And what part in that is nurture? Like, I've been told to do that. I've been told to somehow live for my child, at least until he's, I don't know, 15 and 18.
mhm, mhm, 100%. For you, Renata, what's been the hardest part of motherhood for you?
um to let go of all the expectations toward myself I had myself, I guess. I
Mhm,
I want, like, some things were really hard for me to accept that I could work, let's say, when my children are still very young.
mhm,
We were going to the kindergarten, and still they go to school, but when the school finishes at 3 and they come home, and when I work after 3 and they at home, I feel guilty. So
mhm.
if I continue working, I know that I have to manage the guilt inside me and still do what I wanna do. But
Yes.
that doesn't, and as you said, I am in all of that also every day. I, talk with people, I do those interviews, I have parenting support groups. So I am in that all day long, and still feelings don't go away. My children are 8 and 10.
Mhm.
I still have this guilt inside me when we're at home. And even if they don't need me, because they can be outside playing, I still have this inner conflict, like, mm, I could feel it.
Am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? Yes, that's huge. And I think what's probably so wonderful for any moms listening in is just to know that they're not alone. That many, 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 many moms feel the same. This constant pull of, like you said, I love my work, or this is something that I want to be doing, but I also need to be. I feel as if I need to be with my kids all the time and nurturing my kids. But what about nurturing my soul too?
Mm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, my wish for my little girls as they grow up and if they choose to become mothers is that maybe one day they live in a different world which embraces nurturing full human beings, whether it's the child or the mother or the father, but not just kind of segments of human beings.
I remember this one day, my daughter, she was maybe 4, And at that time, I was a full-time mom, and we were discussing family. I don't know why. And she told me, she was 4. She told me, I don't know if I want to have children when I grow up. I was like, why? Because maybe I want to do other stuff, not just being a mom.
Mm.
And I was like, that's how she sees me. And I, I mean, I guess it's okay if it's really by choice. If you are a mom by choice, so that's perfect. But that was, for me, the time to ask myself, so am I doing that by choice? Because I really love that and I don't want to do anything else with my life. And that's fine, because then I feel peace, inside me. Or am I doing that because I don't know why? And then it even gives this message to my daughter that she's like, I don't know if I want to have children. Maybe not, because then you do mom all day long and that's boring.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting, because I think when we take care, and I've got a similar story to share with you in a second, but I think when we look again after that whole human being, so when we nurture all of it and we let our kids know this is why mom works, or this is where mom's joy comes from in her work, this is where mom's joy comes in when I look after you, maybe our kids also get a different perception of what motherhood can be. And I think sometimes, the other day, my little girl Una, she's 7, she said to me, just their dad was away and it was a really, really, really busy day, and I could tell I was kind of grumpy, and we got to bedtime and I was just exhausted, and I was like, okay, we're just doing one book tonight, mom's so tired. And I could feel that I'd been grumpy leading up to the book. And then she said something to the impact of, being a mother is so hard. You're always working. It looks really hard, mom. Thank you for everything that you do for us, which is all like very sweet. But I had to take a minute after they'd gone to bed to just kind of reflect on what was the energy that I was giving out. And we're going to have those days. Our kids need to know that we're going to be messy and we're going to be grumpy sometimes. We can come back and repair. But I also had to think about the message that my kids were maybe seeing from me, and if it's a once-off or if it's a continuous thing. And the next day I said to her, I came back and I said, this is not everybody's experience, but my experience of motherhood, when I'm with you guys, it's 80% joy. And then there are times where it's really hard for me. But for me so far, it's just been a really joyful experience being your mom. And mom is going to be grumpy sometimes and tired sometimes, but I really do love being here with you, because I think when I'm exhausted, sometimes I inadvertently give another message.
Yes. I remember my mom, because she had a very hard life. She was raising us 3 daughters very young. She was working a lot and it was really hard for her. And I remember her saying, sometimes when we were really brats, she was like, but how ungrateful you are. I'm doing all of that for you. And the strange thing is, what I wasn't feeling that. I wasn't feeling that she was doing all of that for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was giving all of that for us in such a struggle and in such unhappiness that I wasn't receiving anything she was giving to us. I was only receiving this resentment and was like, I don't want that. Let's keep that. I don't want it. And when I hear that voice in my head, I hear myself I wanna tell you how much I've done for you. I was like, oh my God. Oh my gosh, where I'm going.
We hear our mother's voices coming out. But that resentment, what do you think about that resentment? Because I think that resentment is probably an emotion felt by many mothers, even if it's hard to actually name it. There's probably guilt around naming the resentment. But where do you think that comes from? What do you think that is?
As a child?
No, as a mom, as a child, you were picking up, you might not have had the word, but what I'm hearing is you were picking up a little bit on your mom's resentment, and you're saying, I don't want to carry that.
Yeah, and anger, and we had now that I am not a child anymore, and I'm able to have a little bit a broader comprehension of what happened. So we had a lot of discussions, and my mom told me that, not in those exactly words, but she was like, you think I chose that? If I had to choose what I want to live as life, I would have chosen very differently. I would have loved to be this happy mom for you. I would have loved to have this free time. I would have loved to have less work to do. So that resentment was because she wasn't living her life, and she was angry and sad, and
Mm.
like, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that big question of, where am I in any of this? Who am I in any of
Exactly.
this? Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think often that invisible workload of many moms too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm up, I'm doing the laundry, I'm making lunches, but nobody sees what I'm doing. There's no there's a feeling, I think, sometimes when there's resentment, that there's no feeling of deep appreciation. And they're kids. They don't know, right? It's like, yeah, of course I've got clean clothes, and of course there's lunch that's ready for me, but there's no, they don't know everything that goes into that, and then maybe the sacrifices from their moms. And I think when we don't feel seen, that resentment builds, which again is just such a beautiful reminder that we have to look after ourselves in order to look after our kids.
Yeah, kids don't get the value of that. I remember, obviously, you don't value because, like, you
It's
have
just
a
there.
hot lunch, like, yeah,
Yeah,
just there. And even, I don't eat that. I don't like that.
exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And I remember I I went to my parents' house last year because I was organizing a mom retreat. Like, we spent 2 days together talking,
Oh.
sharing our experiences. And we happened just to be next to my mom's house, and she knew that. And when they came back, we did this like activity on the water. We were all like exhausted, very hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom came along and she was like, you know what? I have a hot meal. Would you like that? I was like, oh my gosh, that's the most precious thing in the world. But I could feel the value because I'm an adult now, and I know how much value is in a hot meal when we're hungry,
Mm-hmm.
and
100%.
how you don't appreciate that when you're a child. That's normal. Yeah, you don't
Yes.
get, feedback like, oh yeah, wonderful mom, because I have something hot to eat.
Totally, totally. And I think too, as an adult, I love that, just that reflection, right? Where it's like when you're young, you don't think about it, but when you're older, there's so much appreciation. Um, you know, now as an adult, when I think back, I mean, for my mom too, there was with 4 kids, and I think she was also often just, when I think about her life now, she was constantly in the car driving us places. She was also trying to juggle a job. There was so much going on in her world that I had very little appreciation for. And and now as an adult, when I reflect back, I think I would say now that I would prefer less time with my mom and more full time, more quality time, so that she looked after herself more, so that there was more heart in when she was with me and present with me. When I think back now, she was with us a lot. So she was working, but when she was with us, she was doing a million things. She was a teacher, so she worked when we were in school. But I think that I would have preferred less time with her and had her actually looking after herself more, so that when she was with me, she was fully present and there was more heart in it. And I need to remember that for myself too, is that I don't need to be with them all of the time, that I can look after myself, because then I'm more likely to be the mom that I want to be with my girls.
Mm. I guess that's a message that in all the circumstances, and no matter the way you want to be a parent, you have to choose your way, because in any case, children wouldn't get whatever you do instantly because they are children, and they're gonna appreciate that and see the value in what you did later on in life. But at least you have to be in peace with yourself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I believe in, and this is what I give you, even if you don't understand the value of that. But that's what I believe in, and that's how I live. Because no matter you do, children would always have something to say. Like, if you spend too much time with them, you're gonna be unhappy because, like, or if you spend not enough time with them, I remember my kids asked me, like, I was only the one who was like picking them at school after school. I was like, why can't we have a nanny like other people? like mom, like, nannies come for the children. Why so? And that's how they are, children. I mean, they see
Mm-hmm.
things as they are. They want maybe some even different things because we see they, like, other kids having different things, like going with nanny somewhere. We're like, why that always have to be my mom? It's so
Totally.
boring. It's so
Yeah.
boring.
It's just kids, right? It's like that what that person has over there is so much better than what I
So
have
if
right
you do
now.
that, at least exactly. So if you do that, I guess the message is that you have to do what you really want to do. So this, if you want to go always by yourself and don't have nanny, that's fine if that's what you want. But you feel like, no, that's not what I want. I do that because I feel obliged. Then go and get help,
Yeah.
nanny or grandma or whatever.
Whatever. I agree 100%. And I think so often moms, human beings, maybe they look at their kids to go like, are they okay? Are they not okay? But we need to remember too that their brains are still developing, their moral systems are still developing, their understanding of the world is still developing. So I love what you're saying here, Renata, is just as a mom, just anchoring into your values and going, okay, what do I think is important here? And then living it. And later we can come back and say, this is what mom did and why I did the things that I did. But really just taking the time to go like, what do I believe in and what do I need right now?
And how do you think we do that? Like in all this external noise, and everyone have as an opinion, and when everyone knows better,
Yeah.
how do we do that? How do we even listen to ourselves?
Yeah. I think for people, it comes in different ways, but I think it's seeking moments of quietness. And it doesn't need to be, an hour-long massage or a self-care day, which many moms, I think when we talk about self-care, they go, there's even more guilt because I should be looking after myself and I don't have time and I'm failing in that area too. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but I think each day just trying to carve out 5-10 minutes to go, okay, what do I need from today? Who do I want to be today? So just who do I want to be? How do I make that happen? Maybe those two questions. And whether it's jotting it down, whether it's just being mindful with those two questions, and then keeping to it, reminding yourself throughout the day, who do I want to be? How am I going to make that happen? And our kids don't just suddenly, when they're 20, 25 years old, learn about boundaries. They don't just suddenly learn about self-care, and self-care can mean so many different things for different people. They don't just suddenly learn to be able to have a voice. That comes from watching their primary caregiver repeatedly put in healthy boundaries, repeatedly have a voice, repeatedly engage in self-care that's meaningful for them. It's not something that just happens when they're 20. So really one of the best gifts that we can give our kiddos is for them to go, I watched my mom do this over and over and over again, even if there was a grandma over here who was judging or an auntie or a teacher. My mom knew who she was. And so I am more likely to actually know who I am in the world.
How do we get that conscious? Because that's about consciousness, and that's something that we don't, how do I put this? We don't value, I guess, value like more external things, like, the place I live in, what do I have in my kitchen, the
Mm-hmm.
clothes I'm wearing. But then this consciousness thing, like, it's like, it's kind of, it's what it seems like more struggle, because when you go inside and you find stuff in there and then it hurts, so I was like, oh, it's even worse.
It's worse than I thought.
It's even worse than I thought before. It's so like easier to go and do some shopping or eat ice cream. So
Yep.
how do you go there? Like, what's your motivation to
So
suffer?
what's so interesting? One of in here in the States, in the States, we're in Canada, but Dr. Daniel Siegel, he's just done amazing work. One of my favorite books by him is actually called The Whole Brain Child. It's probably my favorite book when it comes to working with kiddos. And in there, he talks about research that was done that showed that the type of parent you're going to be to your child does not depend on your own background. So, some people might go like, oh, I had no traumas and my parents stayed together and I went to a nice university. That doesn't actually matter. What matters is the amount of reflection that we've done over our childhood. So we can have somebody who had a really difficult upbringing and then became a mom, but they've taken the time to actually go, what does it mean about that upbringing? What does it mean about me? Who do I want to be in the world? That person will actually be it will more likely be a stronger role model for their child than a person who says they had no trauma or no terrible things, but hasn't taken any time to actually sit down and think. So I would say to everybody out there, your own work, your own journey is probably the most important work that you will ever do. And whether it's with a therapist, whether it's with a really good friend, whether it's with a priest or another type of spiritual leader, whether it's through a retreat, whether it's just taking time to yourself each day, find that space. You know, there's so much every day that eats up our waking moments. And lots of us will go like, but I'm just so busy. But if you can sit and scroll through Facebook, if you can scroll through Instagram, if you're binging on Netflix, that's telling me that somewhere in your day you actually do have 5-10 minutes to start just gradually going, who was Renata before a child? Who was Tania before a child? What did we want? What did I want in the world? What do I need to work through? And like I said, healing comes in different places for different people. But it's probably the best gift that we can give our children is our own healing.
You know, I think it's not that we don't have time, even if we say so, like, I don't have time. Obviously, we have time because we have time for even less, important activities. But it's like we are all those addicts to pleasure. And going and buying some stuff that gives pleasure. I know that doesn't go very far, but still, the instant you buy some new dress, you're like,
Totally, yeah.
And then, going on Instagram and Facebook, it gives this, I don't know, whatever pleasure is that, but it gives you this instant gratification. Like you feel for some reason, I don't know, better, involved, like you feel like you are active, you participate. And then all this other stuff, like take time for yourself, like reflect on yourself, try to know yourself better. It's like, why would I even do that? Like, I don't like my life, and that's enough like that. I want to find some stuff that would give me relief. And when you ask me to go even deep in that stuff, that I know that, oh my gosh, that's so, that's so hard. So where do you get that motivation? How do you get unhooked from all those things we do, to feel better, even if that, doesn't last, but still.
Yeah.
And how do you find the motivation to go and to do the stuff that lasts and then give us not maybe the instant gratification, but when we get rewarded in the long term?
Yeah, these are such powerful questions, Renata. I think for me, I would say for anybody listening in, just take a second after listening today and ask yourself, what do I want for my child? And it's not, I can tell you now that your relationship and connection with your child is not going to be about another activity, another shopping trip, another object that they're going to have. It's going to be about how well you know yourself. And so you don't have to go down to deep childhood trauma instantly. Don't do that. Wait, we want to go slowly, but just start small and say, you know what, before I look at my phone, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes, and maybe I'll open up a journal and see if I start to write a little bit. Maybe I'll paint quietly if I'm someone who paints, but let me go slowly. So we don't need to go and do that deep work instantly. Just instead of picking up that phone, instead of turning on Netflix or Disney or whatever it might be, just say to yourself, for today, I'm just going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to be quiet. And whether I'm doodling, whether I'm painting, whether I'm journaling, let me just see what happens. Start with 5 minutes. And if it goes longer, that's great. If not, that's okay. And then when you're ready next week, we can move it to 6 minutes. But just start with being still, being quiet, and let's see what comes from there. We're not saying don't engage in things that bring you pleasure. We're not saying don't pick up your phone. None of those things. Start small with the silence, because there's a lot of beauty that comes from the silence. Just as a culture, as a global world, we've become so scared of space and silence and presence.
There is, you mentioned Daniel Siegel, and I think about I don't know if you know her. Her name is Pema Chodron. She,
No, I don't. Yeah.
she's not in any way related to child psychology, but she's a nun, and she has written, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 books about, I would say, consciousness. And what she's recommending in her book, she's saying that, whatever you do in your day, just take a break and look through the window. Whatever you think about that, like you can be in the middle of, like you can work, you can just have finished your Zoom conversation, you can start like another podcast, you could just get up and go for a drink, or you can go to the toilet when you go to your car and you drive somewhere. And every time you think about that, you are conscious that I can have a break. You just stop whatever you are doing and just look through the window or just look outside, just whatever that takes, like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. You create this gap in your activity filled day. You create this gap in your thoughts when you think all the time about, everything. And you create those small gaps in your day. That's simple as it gets. And then she says that if you do that, after some time, those gaps are going to happen by themselves. You're going to pass by a tree and suddenly you're going to lift your head and see a bird. Oh. And that's all it takes. Something that is like, then you have this awe moment and you are no longer in your own drama, your own story about yourself as a mom, your children, the whole family. You're just this liberated person that frees herself and then for some seconds stays free and then comes back to her life.
I love that so much. And I think that message is the same, is just start small. And each time, you have those moments, instead of going like, oh, maybe I'll just pick up my phone, just stop yourself for a second and do something that's really good for yourself instead.
Exactly. I love that. Start small, because it's almost impossible to start big, because it feels so different. When I don't like it. I don't want to give my time for that. But then if I can start small and feel the pleasure of that small moment giving me break, I might wanna wish more for more.
100%. Yeah, I love it. I think it's so beautiful. I think for all mothers out there, I think our message is take the time. Take the time. Take the time.
Thank you, Tania. Could you tell to all of us where can people find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah. So if you go to our website, Institute of Child Psychology, even if you just Google it, but it's instituteofchildpsychology.com, we actually in November, it's November 14th to the 17th, we have a free conference coming up and we have phenomenal speakers. Dr. Daniel Siegel is one of our speakers. So if people navigate over, there's beautiful content on there. And some of our speakers talking in more depth about what you and I have touched on today. So I would say move over there, have a look at the conference. You can sign up now. It's already up for people to have a look at. And then we also have an Instagram page and a Facebook page.
Lovely. I'm going to put that into notes so it's even easier to just click on the link there.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was it felt like a second.
I know. Yeah, I spoke. Yeah, it's so nice to actually just speak about being a mother. There's so many important child psychology topics, but I think just being a mother is such an important topic.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes I feel that parents have this part who is left out, into parenting. We try to focus so much on children, and obviously there are reasons we should do so, but then we forget about parents, and it always feels good to talk about parents too. How do they navigate what's happening to them, in a family?
Totally. 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Thank you so much. I loved it. It was so fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye.